So the way we're going to be running this demonstration is that I'm going to give you a quick introduction to the world of Tyk, probably really run you through how you can set up a quick API as well as a little bit of security. And then we'll look at how the integration with Moesif works. And then Matt is going to be talking about walking us through how the Moesif interface and all of the different capabilities that he just spoke about is going to look like in reality. So I am going to go back into sharing mode again, and this time I'm going to share my entire screen because there's going to be a lot to share. All right, so quickly, this is what Tyk looks like, and I need to log in again. This is what the Tyk dashboard looks like, and as you can see, there's a few different activities that you can already look at from what I have done over a little period while testing and over a couple of days. But what you are going to be interested in is this area around APIs, and I've got a few different APIs available. Do not be alarmed if in your case this is going to be empty. Now, what I'm using in terms of installation, I've got a local installation that I'm running from my system. You can do so as well. You can go over to tyk.io, and you've got a free trial ability here, which you can then sign up for our different selection that we've got. So you can choose an on-premise setup like I've got, a self-managed setup like I've got, or you can choose a cloud-hosted setup if you want to do that, and you can get up and running really quickly. So for this, I'm going to really show you how to use this, adding a new API. I'm going to just call it test API, and I'm just going to be using HTTP bin. As you can see, there is support for a few different capabilities with a GraphQL, or you want to unify things using the Universal Data Graph. Again, a very exciting capability, which we can talk about in a future webinar, perhaps. And I'm going to hit configure. You've got a few different configurations over here. Just to start things off, I'm going to be removing off my security and making it keyless. Hit the save button, back in, and I've got my API. If I hit that URL, I should be getting my API up and running already. Now I can obviously use Postman as well. You might be familiar with Postman. It's a really, really useful tool when it comes to testing your requests and responses, which is what I'm going to be doing here. And I can hit that send endpoint, get information in a slightly different way, and that's all. That's done. My API is working. Now, if I wanted to add in my security parameter, I'm going to remove the keyless and change that to authentication token, hit update, and if I were to go back now to Postman, it is going to restrict my access and say authorization field is missing, and therefore I'm not going to let you access the API. So the way you would do that is you go into policies, and policies are basically, they define the rules of engagement of how your authentication token or API keys would work and be applied to your APIs. And for that, I'm going to be selecting the API that I want to create the policy for. You can choose multiple APIs if you wanted to. You can add and remove APIs at a later stage. But basically, policies help you manage and create APIs that apply to multiple APIs, as opposed to having to manage keys on a per API basis. I go into configurations, and configurations, I'm going to be giving this a name, test API policy. Spell that correctly. I'm going to set my expiration to maybe never for now, and I'm going to hit create policy. So my policy has now been created. The next step is to create a key based off of that policy. I'm going to go into my key section, hit add key, select the policy, and it will automatically inherit all of the different things that I might have configured as part of the policy. We'll see what those can be shortly. Get my key, and obviously keep this safe and secure, because if you lose this, then you'll have to recreate this process all over again. I'm going to head back over to Postman, go into my headers. I'm going to add a new header called authorization. I'm going to get my key back here and hit send, and I should get back my API again. Now you've got your API security through authentication token available as well. So that's done. Beyond that, you do have a few different configurations that you can manage through policies. As I will show you now, we've got rate limiting, which is essentially the number of requests that you can have or you can send to an API on a per second basis. The big brother of this is basically your quotas, where you can do the same thing, but over a longer period of time. You would use this potentially as part of your API monetization strategy, because you may want to restrict access to, for free users may have limited access, whereas premium users may get more API requests over a period of time. Or you might be looking at rate limiting based off of your traffic management of your system as well, where you want to restrict the number of requests hitting your server over a period of time. Beyond this, we can obviously set this now on a per API basis as well. So you can do this at a global limit. You can set this as a global limit, or you can do this as a per API limit, per API basis as well, in case there are outliers to the policies for a specific API. With that, I think that the only other step that I'm going to be showing a little bit about is the developer portal. So this is the developer portal. As I said, this is a really simple content management system that helps you to publish and catalog your APIs. And I've got access here. Now, basically, you want to look at your API catalog. What you can do is go over to catalog section here, and I can add a new API. Let's call it the test API is what we've been using. Select a policy to associate with it. You can add a bit of a description. I'm going to leave that blank at the moment. And you can attach documentation if you want. And this documentation can come from a Swagger file as a JSON, or a Swagger URL if it's hosted elsewhere. Or you can also use Apiary's blueprint here as well. So I'm going to remove this for now. I'm just going to save it, and you'll see that my API is going to be available for consumption now using the developer portal. I can request, as a third-party developer, I can now request access to a key, and it will give me a key that I can use to access my API. Now, right now, this is on automatic approval process, and you can actually choose to have different moderation journeys if you want, moderation workflows if you want. You may have questions and things that you might want to put in place here, which you can then review and then approve whether the API key should be made available or not. So this, in a really, really brief way, is a very, very simple introduction to the world of Tyk. There is way more things that you can do, but for the purpose of today's demonstration, we're going to be sticking to just this. And of course, if you go back, you get a bit of information over here, but we'll look at how you can look at the log browser, a few different elements around what you can do with the API calls that we've done. But beyond that, let's look at the actual integration with Moesif, and that's where the exciting stuff comes in, about what we are talking today. Now, there is documentation that is available on our website. If you just search for Tyk and Moesif, on Google, you will automatically be sent over here. This is pretty much the top result, and we've got a few different steps that you need to follow. Really, really straightforward, as I'm going to be showing you now. So the first step is to go over to Moesif and to create an account, which you can do using the sign up process. I already have an account, so it will automatically log me in. The next step that you would do is that you need to get the API key. And in order to do that, well, I can show it from here. I've got the API keys right here available. I can hit here. There is a sandbox API key application ID that's available that you can use, or you can set up your management API key for production purposes if you want, which is what Matt will talk about what that enables. But for now, I've just used this sandbox ID. And the next step over here is to head on over to the pump configuration file, and add in just a simple little config into our file. So if you have installed, so this works only on your self-managed system. And if you've looked at that, I've got a slightly more expanded setup at the moment with multiple different gateways, but I'm going to make it very simple, as simple as possible, where if you just search for the pump.conf file, here you will see you've got different configurations already there. What you want to look for is the pumps section, and add in the Moesif stuff that you see over here, the information that you've got here. Obviously, change the application ID to match the application ID either for your sandbox API key or for your production API key that you might have, which I've already done over here. Beyond that, we go on to the next step, where under the analytics, we need to have this enabled. This is going to be part of the Tyk gateway configuration, which is available here as tyk.conf. And over here, you can easily search for detailed recording, and you will see that you've got detailed recording that you just need to set to true. as well as enable analytics set to be true under this area, which is what we are doing over here. Once all of that is done, we need to restart our server. We need to restart our container if you're using Docker to run all of this. Once you've done that, you'll have your integration ready and available on Tyk. So I've got all of that already set up. So if I went back onto my application, you will see that there's already been a bit of activity. If I now check out the live event log, it will show me the different things that I've done recently, where my latest response, I think I made an API call to HTTP bin, and I got a response out of this, which is available here. I've got authorization enabled. I believe with this, it would have said that my authorization field is missing, and therefore this was an error code. So at a very simple level, that is how you would integrate Tyk with Moesif. It's a very, very straightforward process to do this. And beyond this, we're going to be looking at some advanced stuff. And that's where, Matt, I'm going to throw this back to you.
Okay. So Buddha showed you the Tyk integration. Again, lots of documentation on that. Also showed you the live event log. So this is kind of what I would say is kind of the hub of things from the analytics side. So what I can do is, I'm going to say in the last 12 weeks, you see that I've got a bunch of stuff here. The big difference between my setup and Buddha's setup is that I have company and user tracking enabled, and that's quite easy to do as well. It's actually in the Moesif setup guide of how to do that. But every single API call that's made, and it could be tied to an API key, it could be tied to lots of different types of authorization, it's going to actually stamp that user, and then that user can be associated with the company. And then every time those two things are pushed together. So you can see how a company is using your API, or you can see how individual users are using an API. Now, from a Tyk perspective, there is one thing that we want to look at. So we want to look at where metadata Tyk API name is, and then we can select our API name. So I have an API in Tyk called my API, and you'll see that all of this stuff got brought over. You can see that I did actually implement the customer and user tracking here. And that's, if you want a precise guide on that, there is a Tyk and Moesif monetization guide that guides you through it in explicit detail. So we have this here, and this is great, but it means that every single time we want to look at this, we would have to type in this filter. What if we wanted to have, let's just say, save this to a dashboard? What I'm going to do is I'm going to do save. I'll call this Tyk API calls. I can have a dashboard that is just my own private dashboard, or I can have a team dashboard. I'm going to put this on a team dashboard, and I'm going to select the dashboard I want to put it on. And I'm going to put this on, let's just say, my engineering dashboard. And I'll click save. I'm going to exit out of this for a second. And what you're going to see is that over here, I have a bunch of saved dashboards. So if I click on customer success, you'll see that I have, and I'll just override the date range here so it includes a lot more data. You see I have a customer success dashboard. This is all pre-made. So we do pre-can some of it with some of our most popular tiles, but you can create your own tile just like we just did. So, we have the same thing for product, and I just added that one to engineering. So if you do have some type of visual or chart that you want to put in place and embed that in a dashboard, you can do that just by saving it and saying what dashboard you want to save it to. So for product-led growth, that might be really important. Maybe you want to have under product or customer success, maybe you have one very, very large company that's using it, using your platform, and you want to keep an eye on them. You could actually filter and just say, users from X company, and you can filter based on that. So you have all these dashboards. You can create a new dashboard, very highly customizable. Now, the next thing that I want to show you is user funnels. Okay. So we have these dashboards, which are great. It allows us to see kind of what's ongoing, and we can have it refresh every 15 seconds, 60 seconds, 5 minutes. So we don't have to constantly refresh the page, but we'd have to constantly look at this in order to get those insights. What happens if we want to go and see, like we talked about with product-led growth stuff, how users are actually using our product or where they're getting stuck? If I click on users over here or companies, they're both going to see roughly the same type of thing. I can filter my users based on, attributes that they have, or I can filter them, or I can filter them with events that they've performed. But what I want to do is actually come over to at the top here and come to funnel. And I want to see how many users basically sign up, log in, and then log in after that. So I can see, like, do people just come to my site or use my API once and then never come back? So what I'm going to do is I'll click request URI route is, and I'm going to switch this just to the last 12 weeks. So I want to see data from the last 12 weeks. And it'll automatically populate all of the endpoints that you have within that time frame. So I'll click /login. And I want a second step that is URI route is /login. And what a step allows you to look at is, so first step is essentially an action. And then the second step is like a sequential action. So we can see here that users log in once. So we have a count of 209. And in order to get to step 2 here, which is a second time they log in, you're looking at a rate of 43.06 or 90 users. So that's a pretty big drop off. What I want to do is I want to add another step. I want to know how many people return, 3 times after that. So I'll go request URI route is /login, where it happens at least 3 times. So this is what we find really interesting. We can get really cool insights from this. So people that log in a second time after coming to the site or using the API once is 43.06%. But 38.28% actually continue to use the service, which means if we essentially we can develop a hypothesis from this. If we can get people to log in a second time, their chances of continuing to use the platform is much higher. So we could use stuff like behavioral email. Maybe if we find that, the reason why people are not logging in a second time is because maybe here they're getting a bunch of 401 errors and that's stopping them from using the API again or logging into the service again. What if the first time they logged in, they got a 401 error, we sent them an email and said, hey, it looks like you're getting a 401 error. Here's how to fix it. Maybe we would see this go up. Maybe we just need to drive more people into this initial login. Lots of different ways that we can look at these results. We could also look at it and say, we can divide this up by company. So I can do company domain here. We could look at company domain. Let's just say is travelers, for instance. I can look at, what does it look like for people who are part of the travelers company. I could also do group by here and group by the company, let's say the company domain. And I can look at my top 5 companies here in terms of usage. So we can see, travelers, ConnectWise, some that have no company associated, Lockheed Martin or Hilton Worldwide. Again, this is just test data. But what we can look at is we can see, right here that people that aren't part of a company are tending to have a higher conversion. People who are part of ConnectWise, they're kind of our lowest conversion. So we can use these types of insights to say, hey, maybe if we can drill down and say, hey, people from a specific company, let's make sure that maybe we can try some stuff with them. Maybe people that are from ConnectWise, maybe we start sending them a behavioral email that says like, hey, if you get a 401, here's how to fix it. Maybe we'll start to see this bump up and then we can roll that out more widely. So from there, again, this is super flexible. You can dial this in however you want. From there, what we'll do is we're going to look at alerts. So I've got some pre-canned alerts that I've already got here, but let's look at what it takes to create a new alert. So I'm going to click plus alert rule to create a new one. And let's say I want to alert my customer success team when a new user gets more than 3 401 errors. So for this, I can do response status code is actually, let's just say greater than 299. And we want them to be every 15 minutes over the last hour. So if they get any of these codes in the last 15 minutes over the last hour, then they're going to get a alert. Okay. So what we'll see here is we can see the alert broken down. For events where response status code is greater than 299, where event count is greater than 5 over the last 15 minutes. So maybe we can bump that up. We could say, let's just say over 5 minutes, we could decrease it. And then say, if they get 3 within 5 minutes, I'm going to send an alert to, I could do an email, SMS, Slack, PagerDuty, or if you have some type of custom webhook that you want to send to, you can do that as well. You can set throttling for those, make sure that you're not getting hundreds per hour. But I've already got some set up. So I'm going to click my email and I'm going to name my alert. I'll say new user errors. And if I click create, you'll see that I have a little synopsis of it. Click create. And then if I come back to alert rules at the bottom here, you'll see that here's my new user errors alert that I just created. Now, let's just say I'm running the customer success team. I'm going to get a notification whenever a person essentially is a new user and they're having issues. I'm going to get alerted so that I can investigate it and potentially help them out. Now, that's a little bit of a manual way to do it, but sometimes people like to have that manual intervention. What if we wanted to just do that automatically? So for that, what we would do is come over to behavioral emails and I can click create template. We got some pre-canned ones for, rate limit warnings, onboarding guidance, all these types of things. I'm going to select blank. I'll call this new user errors. Then we have this notion of a cohort. So this is like a group that we want to send this to. And what I'll do is I'll create a new user cohort. These are a couple of ones I've already created or pre-canned. I'll do new user cohort. And I'm going to do this where they had a request, URI route. Sorry, not URI route. I'm going to do response. Status code is, let's just say 401, so unauthorized. At least one time in the last 7 days. We could do, in the last 24 hours if we wanted to. Now, if I wanted to target this specifically at, a company, I could also do that. Users where company domain is, and then select, let's just say ConnectWise, for instance. I could do that. I could trial this out with a small subset if I wanted to try out a behavioral email instead of rolling it out, platform wide. I'll get rid of that, but I will call this, we'll call it new user error email. And then I'll click create cohort. And what you'll see is now I'm going to send to whenever people join this cohort. So if someone is a new user and gets this error, I'm going to send them this email, call it subject line. Well, sorry about your errors because I'm Canadian. So I'm always saying sorry. And then, from email, I just might do like team@mycompany.com. You'll have to set, now in order to send these, you do have to set your account up through, you could use SendGrid or AWS, these types of things. You do have to have some type of SMTP provider, but most already have that set up. You can actually set up one through Gmail as well if you want. You can specify a from name, CC addresses. Maybe you want to CC the support team as well. And you can make it a recurring workflow as well. So essentially saying that, if this person continues to get this, they'll get this email again. So I might say, 1 week. So if they're still having this issue a week later, I'm going to send them another email. And I can create that email, add row, add content. I'm going to take a text tag here, drop it in, say, hey, sorry about your errors. Here's a guide. And then put a link in. I mean, this is, again, super simple. There's ways to customize this to make it look much better. But, if I were to create this, it would then be created for me. And then I can, turn this on And I could even test this out right now. But essentially what we're doing is we're putting bumpers on here so that if the user is getting a 401, we don't want them to give up. We want to send them some info about how to integrate correctly. And we can do that really dialed in if we want to. Governance rules, what I'll do is I'm going to show you billing stuff first, and then I'll quickly show what you might implement. But a billing meter is actually really easy to do. So, I've got Recurly and Stripe set up here. And essentially I can do add new billing meter. I call this, type test. And then if I've created a product in Recurly or Stripe, it'll actually pull that in. So I can say, I want Stripe. Maybe I want my product will be my API, and the price that I want to apply would be API call. So this is all defined again in Stripe. I've created all of this stuff. And I might want to charge on every single call where a request is to a specific URI route. So let's say every time that they log in, so enter login, do 12 weeks. So every time they do a login and their response is a 200, do is equal to 200. Okay. And now if I were to create this, what will happen is there's a little bit of user and company configuration that you have to do. Again, there's a whole entire guide for how to do that with Stripe and Tyk. But essentially what I've done right now is if people start using this login and they get a 200 OK, it is going to tally up that and send it off to Stripe. We don't have any real intervention in terms of the user has nothing to do. All they have to do is sign up, probably provide a credit card, those types of things. But in terms of actually dialing in what I'm going to charge on, I've already done that. And this would actually be live right now. Now, if someone had an unpaid bill, let me show you what that would look like. So if I wanted to do, I could set up a user rule. I could say, unpaid invoice. And if I could spell it right, unpaid invoice. And maybe I would I've already created a cohort, same way I did before, users with unpaid invoices. And then I can essentially send them back and say, I think it'd be a 429. Let's see here. No, there is one. Let's just give them, let's just say payment required. There it is, 402. And then I can specify what body I want here. So I can do error, overdue invoice, please pay. And then I could save this, create, and turn it on, and then save again here. And now what would happen is that if a user has an unpaid invoice, it's going to block them from being able to use it. And I could also set up a behavioral email too, that when they have an unpaid invoice and they try and go to an endpoint, it will send them an email, say, hey, you're currently getting a 402. Here's why, and here's how to fix it. So hopefully, I tried to wrap that up as quick as I could. Hopefully that gives an idea of exactly how you could really use Tyk and Moesif together in order to really facilitate, API-led and product-led growth to essentially help out your customers, because that's where the real value is.